Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. So Carlos, you were saying in the pre-pod meeting that you really don't understand Lions fans, but you want to, and I think that's a really good first step. And I'm just kind of curious to what you've learned on this journey of enlightenment into fandom after 50 years living here.
I've learned that Shawn Windsor must, by the way, calling this a meeting is the loosest term possible for this, is that we could call this a pre-podcast meeting, but mostly you and I just, insulting each other. I learned to have to listen to Shawn Windsor to tell me what I really should think and believe, and he can really explain to me who the real fans are. I don't understand that. It's hard for me to reach that intellectual level, Shawn, to understand the people. You connect with people. I understand that more. So you can explain it to me. Who are the real Lions fans? I thought it was your boys who nearly came to tears after they lost an early season game in Minnesota, but apparently they're not real fans, I think, in your estimation.
No, they're real fans. They just represent, I think, a fairly average Lions fan. And that's the difference. No, I don't connect more with people than you do. I think it's just a matter of observation, maybe. And look, let's talk about the difference. Let's get into not philosophy here. We can get into semantics, whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about the difference between cynicism and skepticism in our business, but also just in life, right? So when you're cynical,
it's kind of cynical, by the way. The Greeks were cynical. They were cynics.
No,
they brought a lot to society by looking at things in a critical,
way. They were skeptical.
It's a bad word.
It's
bad to be a cynic.
Well, yeah, because what cynical does is put basically lead cloth over your eyes. You can't see anything. And but skeptical is I think what our business is built around, or at least has been for.
I'm going to guess who the skeptic is and who the cynic is in this conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Skepticism, to question things and to not just wholeheartedly jump into something without at least some kind of evidence is healthy and it's good. But cynicism means you bring your own preconceived notions to something and you judge something before you fully understand it. To me, that's the difference. That maybe is not the most elegant way to put it, but.
That's a made-up definition by Shawn Windsor, but
I think
serves your cause.
No, it's not. It's not my cause. It's just I'm curious. Were you always cynical, or were you skeptical when you were younger? And the older you've got, like the chip on your shoulders just sort of settled in. Where did it go from skepticism to cynicism? Because surely you
went the other way. Probably, I've always been cynical. Cynicism, by the way, defined an inclination to believe that people are motivated purely by self-interest. Yeah. It's also related to skepticism, by the way. School of ancient Greek
they're close.
The cynics.
Yeah, they're close. They're close, but there's a difference.
I think when you cover, one of the things, it depends on what your upbringing is, right? And growing up in LA, very different town. Not a lot of boosterism, not a lot of homerism in the sports community there. It's a very itinerant fan base, even though there are definitely the strongholds, the Dodgers, the Lakers. But people weren't, they were very, they tended to be more objective about their teams and their fanaticism. And some of that could lead to, people were more skeptical about their teams when they weren't performing well. And these are teams like the Lakers and Dodgers who won a lot. And yet people were still very open to be, your guy, your sport, right? Basketball and NBA. Chick Hearn, the play-by-play guy for the Lakers forever. He was really hard on the team. He used to be an executive and for the team, and then he went into play-by-play and became a Hall of Famer. And he was really tough on them. The Kings had Bob Miller, and even the Dodgers had Vin Scully, who didn't sugarcoat things. It's a different world now. Everywhere, even in LA, just because of the regional contracts with broadcast corporations, and the announcers are basically mouthpieces for the teams. It wasn't that way when I was growing up. But also reading the papers, guys like Jim Murray and Mike Downey at the LA Times and Mark Wicker in the Orange County Register. I mean, they were unsparing when teams needed to be criticized. So I've never thought that you should really pull punches or cast the team in the best light. That doesn't mean you don't give people you don't give people the benefit of the doubt sometimes, or try to understand their perspective, players, coaches, executives, whatever. But it's, if a team's not performing well, it's to just be looking on the bright side of all the time really serves no purpose.
Well, no, and it doesn't serve a purpose to do it the other way either. What's interesting to me is, and we don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much because we want to get into the Lions here in the playoffs. And I think Lions fans, I think you agree with this, are watching the playoffs maybe a little bit differently this year because they get kind of close, and you're sort of imagining, wow, how would they stack up, and where would they be short, and what's the next step, and all that sort of thing. And that's what we want to spend the bulk of this podcast talking about. But the market you're talking about, Jim Murray and Mike Downey. Of course, Mike Downey came from Detroit, and he may have been in Chicago for a second too. I'm trying to remember, but most markets had voices like that were critical. I remember wherever I lived, there was always a columnist or two. Back in those days, there were even sometimes more, right? Because there were more than one paper in a town. But listen to me using the word sorry, man, just. I've been watching these British shows lately, and they substitute were for was all the time. It were a great idea. You know what I mean? It were a nice pub. And it's interesting, especially in Northern England, because one of the shows where it's based, and you just hear the singular for the plural for the singular subbed all the time. And
just don't start using a Cockney accent. Just
no, the one thing that their slang is obviously very different, and a lot of their expressions, the idiom, all that. But one thing that I do love, no pun intended here, is the way they say love often to family, even friends, at the end of their sentences. Hey, how you doing, love? Or what do you think of that, love? That's nice, actually. It's but it helps make up for how much they cuss, right? And
their cussing is delicious, yeah.
And just how sharp the words are in general, and how blunt they are with each other. So I've thought, I wonder if the love kind of helps soften all those other sharp edges in the way they speak to each other. But anyway, sorry to get off on that tangent. But a lot of markets used to have columnists that, and they still do. It's fun. I mean, there's still some columnists out there that are. It's just the role has changed and the job has changed. And I was talking about this with a former colleague of ours recently about how much more analytical analysis readers want, and how the market's changed. And to just kind of come in these days and weigh in on something without having at least a pretty decent knowledge of the team or the players, the management, whatever, is tricky. And readers are more sophisticated, fans are more sophisticated, and and they expect more. And it's just, it's interesting, and how you kind of have to adapt to that to some degree. I'm curious. You and I have talked a lot about this, actually.
I think columnists always knew about the teams. I mean, I don't think you get to that level of the profession without, you should know something about the teams you cover. And the thing that is nice right now in the business is, if you're a sports fan, it is kind of a golden age where you can get what you want. It's like a buffet. If you want more in-depth analysis stuff, there's a place to go for that. If you want breaking news, turn by turn things, you go to social media, you follow certain people. If you want greater context and some opinion, some analysis, whatever, you can find that too. The way I've always looked at it, from a columnist perspective, and what I wanted from my columnists when I read them was, cut through all the stats, cut through the talk. Tell me, as usually a columnist is a veteran writer, they've been around long enough, and they can synthesize something with a greater perspective. What does this really? What does this mean? What's happening right now? Don't just give me the quote. Don't just tell me what the coach said and what this guy said and what the stat says and whatever. Tell me what you think this means in your opinion. I may not agree with you, in everything. But what is your opinion about this? And especially, give me, don't be afraid to tell me the truth about whether it's, whether it's complimentary, it's fine. Whether you're harsh, that's okay too. But I want that, and also want to tell me, you have access to these teams, players, locker rooms, whatever. Take me inside, give me a look, give me some context of how people are saying things, what they're feeling, what they look like, how they're presenting themselves. Give me a rounded, view of a situation or an issue or a player, whatever it might be. I want your take, and if I respect you as a columnist, I'm going to read you. If you're interesting, if you're mean, if you're funny, if you're, whatever, I'm going to read you. So, but if it's very surface level, I'm not really giving you a lot. I'm just giving you quotes. I'm just kind of regurgitating what happened or what I saw. Essentially, what we call game stories in the business. I don't really care. I'm not going to stick with you, but take me inside. Give me some what you're thinking, what this means to you and your perspective.
It's interesting. I mentioned our former colleague. I'll just go ahead and say it, Mike Rosenberg. I don't think he would mind. Who you and I both know pretty well. Who works for Sports Illustrated now. We're just talking about the change in nature of the business, and he was telling me about I don't want to give anything away here, but just a piece he's worked on within the last year or so, and he was interviewing an athlete, and one of the how can I phrase this without even giving anything away at all? Somebody that worked for the organization that worked for the athlete, in the media relations business, was sort of nearby during one of these interviews and expressed that they didn't know a lot of what they were hearing come out of this athlete's mouth, just about who they were and their life and all this. And so Mike and I were kind of talking about how that's changed to some degree. The economy is partly a reason for this, right? It's not the economy, the economics of journalism and sports journalism, and because that kind of stuff takes time a lot. But just getting to know the people that you cover, but also from a fan's perspective, a reader's perspective, getting to know the athletes that you enjoy watching. And that really has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and I was explaining to him, for us at the Free Press, to kind of keep it local here for our listeners, we used to have two people in our staff that did just those kind of stories. We had two of them, which was great, relative to the rest of the business. But in any case, what I was talking to Mike about, and you and I think maybe have talked a little bit this about, is that these days it's harder to get in and do those stories unless the teams are interesting in some way, either good or interesting in some other way and compelling in some way. Because, if you were to go do a big deep dive, as we might say in the business, on I don't know, Isaiah Stewart, the center for the Pistons, right? What kind of readership? How much interest is there going to be if they're in the Eastern Conference Finals 5 years from now? I know that sounds crazy, but let's just imagine they were. Then you'd be a lot more inclined to want to know, the life story of probably a lot of the people up and down the roster, and it's just kind of. It's really changed, and it's interesting to think about how we don't know as much about these players. And then, to your point, Carlos, you and I have talked about this before, the idea that a lot of the organizations, whether it's college or pro or whatever, they don't want to know. I mean, they it's not that they don't want us to know, but the access has changed, right? There are not as many. You're talking about all these conversations and getting in the locker rooms. Those conversations aren't as free flowing as they used to be. And that's really changed how we write and cover. And that's not a criticism at all. It's just different. It's just, than when you and I both got in the business. Certainly, it's different than it was 10 years ago.
I think that one thing that's really changed has been social media, and that before social media existed, the athletes thought, and it was true, that if they wanted to get any kind of notoriety or whatever publicity, they had to talk to reporters. They were aware of it. And they could also hide from, a lot of publicity by not being available, hiding in the bathrooms or not being in the locker room during media access. But with social media now, I think they feel like they can promote their own brands, on Instagram and Twitter, and posting pictures of themselves and their puppies and whatever, and they can control the narrative more.
They can.
It's all fluff, of course. But yeah, they're also not gonna, I guarantee you, whatever Mike's writing about, it's all going to be positive. It's all going to be this amazing, great story. He'll write it great, of course. But that's the thing, is that players, I don't know if they see much value in having their life story told. I've tried to, in the last couple of years, there's been a couple of times where I've tried to make inroads in telling a story of a story of a player who's very successful, very well liked, but has had some demons he's had to battle, some problems, some real life problems that really connect with a lot of people in our society. And the team won't let it happen because they are worried about it. They're worried about how this is going to come out, how whatever. And that's part of it too. Like you said, Shawn, I mean, there's so many more things in our society now, so many more. Back in the day, there was a lot of things that could fly. And after our society has changed for the better, it's become a lot more sensitive about issues with racism, with misogyny, with whatever it is, mental health, with
homophobia,
homophobia, you name it, and it's good. And the teams are really worried, like this person, who said, I didn't know that probably scared the hell out of them. Like, what is going to come out of this person's mouth? And I guarantee you that conversation with Rosenberg was, how are you going to write this? So are you going to put that in there? I'm sure they're
it wasn't that. It wasn't based on that. It was just interesting facts about this person's life. Obviously, there's always been a battle, to me, a little bit about, I can remember when I used to do this 20 years ago, about whether you're going to put certain stuff in. And this was always more of a question of, it was more of a struggle for me before I was in sports, when I used to do this just about regular people. And they weren't public figures, right? And sometimes I can remember people telling you stuff and they didn't understand how that was going to look. And I would actually tell, because I felt a moral obligation, right? This is just some regular person, and they're explaining something to you, or talking about something, or being open about something. And I would always say, okay, I want you to understand what this is going to do, and what this is going to, which sounds counterintuitive, because, oh, wow, that's really interesting. You got some great details as a journalist, and that's fine if it's a public figure, right? But in any case, I think to your point about the social media is a good one. I also think the other part of all this, before we wrap, we should probably get into the lines here, is the money involved and the level of money. And so there are a lot more people worried and protective of that money. And there's a lot more money at stake in general. And so that's changed things too, right? Because people feel like they can literally lose money by saying the wrong thing.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at. There's a part of our culture that's actually a real thing.
Well, every player now has their agent, they have their PR manager, they have their whatever, their trainer. There's a lot of mouths to feed. These guys make a lot of money, but there's a lot of mouths to feed. So there's a lot of people, I'm sure, telling them, you're probably only going to get in trouble if you divulge too much about your life, and you don't know how. There's people going to burn you, and just,
or sponsors,
you can't trust anybody. Sponsors,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's the main thing. Right? It's sponsors,
right? Absolutely. More money always makes people quieter about things, for sure.
No, it really. As a society, we don't even like to tell each other how much we make. Right? We're funny about that,
Yeah.
As Americans, we really are. We don't even. We're uncomfortable with it, and it's which is interesting, because we all know what pro athletes make. That's all very public, even though it's not. There's no law that says it needs to be. There's just an assumption, and I wonder if that'll ever change. Because agents want it out there. They want to
they're the ones who leak all the contract details because they want people to know how much their athletes are making. And also, it's also sometimes, especially in the NFL, it's skewed, right? Because it's not guaranteed. It's all like what the potential maximum of this contract can be. That's why for a long time, people just would include the signing bonus because that's guaranteed money for sure. But distinguishing, if you ever listen to the people who break all the news in the NFL, you know who they are. They're always promoting the maximum contracts because it's the agents who are feeding them that.
Well, think about how that relationship would change with fans and players, athletes rather, if they didn't know what they were making. I mean, that would change things. That would change the perception in a lot of ways. And it's interesting. I don't know if it started out that way. I'm not enough of a historian in terms of American sports and money, but think about other forms of entertainment. Acting, for example, you don't see salaries. You don't see salaries attached to actors attached to movies or TV series in the way that you used to. I mean, we watch a lot of the stuff that we watch these days. A lot of it's television because television's become so great, and we have no idea what they're making anymore. You kind of assume they're making a good living, right? But it's not. You used to know what the movie stars made all the time. You still occasionally still occasionally see it now. But isn't that interesting? We used to know all that business, and it's just changed. And I don't know that people care one way or the other.
Yeah, I think it was once upon a time. I mean, when I don't know when, but probably in the early '80s when people started making a lot more money for movies. When $10 million for this picture or whatever it was. Then oh my Lord! But the thing is that the athlete, salaries dwarfed all that, and that's probably maybe has something to do with it. When you're hearing about soccer players and race car drivers making hundreds of millions of dollars plus endorsements on top of that, and whatever, Bruce Willis got 10, 15 million for this picture, whatever. And plus, are you going to are you going to be mad because you watched Die Hard 10 and it wasn't up to your standards, and he made 15 million? You don't care. The ticket was $7 when you paid for it at the movie theater.
And in some ways you don't care. I wonder if we didn't know if we would care with athletes. I mean, because sometimes there's built-in resentment with that too, right? Especially when somebody's not performing well. You'll often hear, well, they make this. How often do you hear, well, they're overpaid? You know what I mean? If that's part of their value, right? And we start to make moral judgments. Anyway, I don't know how we ended up here, Carlos.
I think it's on your. If everybody, I don't want to spill the beans too much, but Shawn's been a little under the weather, so these are probably the medications kicking in that are making him a little bit, a little off center today.
It could be, but listen,
it's good though. I like it.
Let's get back to the Lions for a second, and the fact that Ben Johnson stayed, and I want to know how you got that so wrong. Oh, no, wait, we did that last week. Sorry.
We can come back to it.
Well, let's. I assume you watched the playoffs. Obviously, football fans around here watch the playoffs to some degree every year, but I've had the sense, even from my diminished state, that the last couple of weekends have been watched with a little bit more keener eye from Lions fans who very legitimately are watching and wondering, okay, how do we stack up with these teams, and what would we need to do to be able to compete with the very best of them? And what's your thought? Because we're down to the 4 best teams, I guess, and I don't think that's really an argument. Some years somebody gets in that's upset somebody, but not this year. Buffalo, maybe you could make an argument for, but I don't know. Cincinnati's been balling.
Yeah. That was an interesting game, and definitely the snow complicated matters. It was actually surprising by how much the Bills lost in that game. I think I would have picked the Bills to win that game, but I think, I mean, if the Lions had gotten into the playoffs, right, they would have gone to San Francisco to play. And the Seahawks were, they were blown out in that game. The Seahawks made it instead of the Lions as the last wildcard team. I don't think the Lions would have beaten the 49ers. Even before what happened to the Seattle, before what happened to Dallas last weekend, and they lost at San Francisco. I think San Francisco is a more complete team. It's interesting that they're doing it with Brock Purdy, right? A rookie quarterback, but they have a very complete team. They have an amazing defense. If they had Trey Lance healthy, Jimmy G, like not great, but not terrible. He can play well. It's probably a little underrated. People love to hate on him. I don't think he's great, but he's a pretty steady hand. But Brock Purdy's getting it done. But I think the thing that the Lions, when I think the NFC at least, in the playoffs for the Lions, the thing that they, they're the defense made strides toward the end of the season, the second half of the season, but they're nowhere close to an elite defense. And they don't have an elite offensive weapon right now. I know you love Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he's great. He is a very good player, but he's not an elite. He's not George Kittle. He's not Christian McCaffrey level right now. That can change, and maybe if Jameson Williams is healthy and gets better next year, that's what the hope is, that he's going to be their Jamar Chase or something like that, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase kind of thing. And that's what I see from the Bengals as well. You need that elite weapon. But the Lions, I think they would have given the 49ers a better game, definitely more than the Seahawks. And that's why, like you said, fans are watching it differently because they feel like, we should have been in, and they really should have gotten in. They deserved to get in. And maybe if something, things go well, Michael Badgley is their field goal kicker. The Cowboys have had problems with their kicker. That wasn't really the reason they lost this game, but they don't have they have an elite punter. They don't have a great kicker. And when you have a great defense that you're facing, you're not going to get into the red zone as easily, and you're going to be making long field goals. And those are going to be the differences probably in close games in the playoffs. So what do you think? You think the Lions would be headed to the Super Bowl right now, probably, right?
No, it's interesting because it's just, you can just sense the difference in this year's playoffs from the Lions fans' perspective, and thinking about how they would stack up. This is the way I look at it. I think they could have competed with anybody that was in the playoff in either conference. I think they could have beaten all but the 4 teams that are left.
Right. Yeah.
So that to me is the level that's to me was the kind of level of football they were playing at the end of the year. And we saw that because they went into the Green Bay and basically beat a wild card team.
Mm-hmm.
Right. On the road. And right. They beat the Giants. They beat the Vikings, et cetera, et cetera. We have some proof of that. The question for me is, so where do you go now? So assuming that they don't fall off, and that's a big assumption. As you and I have talked about that. You hate to assume that as a writer, because we see every year that teams fall back. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they're at least as good as what we saw at the end of the year, the last month of the season, that they're that team next year. So what do they have to do to then become good enough to beat San Francisco, Philly? Actually, they showed they could compete with Philly, right? So
sure,
but to beat them, and the Kansas City, Cincinnati, what do they have to do? And because those 4 teams 3 of them are sort of similar. Well, actually, 2 of them are similar, and then the other 2 are similar. And that's what I wanted to get your opinion on. Look, Jalen Hurts has turned into a really, really good quarterback, and he might well just be getting started. But let's face it, that Eagles roster, like like San Francisco, is really good.
Yeah.
In all sorts of places, kind of like the 49ers. Purdy's not an elite quarterback, but he's obviously shown an ability to make plays. And Hurts is a playmaker, and just keeps getting better and better. On the other hand, you got the best 2 quarterbacks, arguably, in the league. And so they're going to be competitive for that reason, a lot like the Packers have been all these years because of Aaron Rodgers. What do you think? Are you of the mind that they can become I don't know that Goff can be Hurts if Hurts is just getting started, but can they become San Francisco? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. If they're going to keep Goff, that's what we're talking about, right?
Offensively, they can. Defensively, they can't. I'll tell you, I don't want to get into the stats too much, but you got Philly and San Francisco in the NFC title game. San Francisco had the number 1 defense this year in the league. Philly had the number 2 defense in the league. In the AFC, you've got Kansas City and you've got Cincinnati. Kansas City, 11th ranked defense in the league, and Cincinnati, 16th. So you have pretty good defenses. But in the NFC specifically, you have really good defense, like elite defenses. And that's where the Lions need to make elite. They drafted almost entirely defense this last draft, and they need to do it again. All 3 levels, especially the back 7, they really gotta make, no, the one thing with the Lions, and I don't want to get into all the details, whatever, but Tracy Walker was a big loss. I don't think people thought about that enough, that his the safety for the Lions, really good player, smart player, lost him early in the season. That was big for them. They really struggled with takeaways on defense. The secondary, the cornerbacks need an upgrade. They need to improve that. And offensively, I think, especially because Ben Johnson is coming back, just like I said he always would. So that is where I'm not worried at all. I mean, in freak injuries, yeah, Goff goes down, St. Brown goes down, something like that. Penei Sewell goes down. Yeah, then that changes a lot of things. But just assuming that they have, pretty average health, a few injuries here and there, but nothing catastrophic on offense. Yeah, that Ben Johnson right now, I'm sure, is coming up with God knows what in his basement and drawing all these plays up and everything, and going to make sure that he definitely gets a job next season, next off season. But the defense is the question. That's the big question. Can they? That was the big difference. Was this leap that they took, or the 8-2 the last 10 games? It was the defense playing better. Can that continue? Is that a mirage? That's the big question.
Yeah, it is a big question. By the way, the Cowboys are really, I don't know where they rank. You have the rankings there, but
Cowboys, they were 12th.
12th?
Yeah.
Okay, they seem like they were better defensively than that, but at times maybe it's just because they have a couple of standout players. But
that's to see the Cowboys on the road. You just thought a lot more of them.
That's a good, Micah Parsons too, right? It's just when you have a dominant player. That's a good question, Carlos, and I want to get to it, but we need to take a quick break. I think I've lost all sense of time here. In fact, I was. It's funny.
I thought we were going to take a break.
Our producer's fussing at us, but also right before he sent that note, I was looking at the stopwatch time here, thinking, "Oh my goodness, we've been rambling on." And I was really leaning on you this week, man, for the energy, for the sense of time, for the wisdom.
No, that's asking way too much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's pay some bills, and we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, I'm sorry, man. I am a little low key today, and I was really hoping that you would, scream at me a little bit more. Pick up the juice, get the energy flowing.
I told you it's okay to take a sick day once in a while if you're not feeling well.
I've had a few of them. I've had a few of them. At some point,
It's okay. You can take more if you're not feeling well.
At some point, you got to come back, right?
Yeah, you do at some point, but it's like a week is okay. If you miss a little time, if you're not feeling well, take the time.
Yeah. In any case,
you put it all on me. It's all on my shoulders now to carry the podcast once again.
I'm sorry that just for once, I was hoping you could do that. No, I'm just having some fun. So you were asking me about the Lions. Look, they're kind of locked in, right? I mean, they're not locked in. They could obviously take a swing with a quarterback with their first pick in the draft and hope that, or make a trade, or they could. No, what I'm saying is, they're not locked in. They can do what they want. I don't think they're going to do it. I mean, they kind of made that clear, and I don't think they should do it. Not that that matters. But I don't think they will do it, and I don't think anybody thinks they're going to do it. All I'm saying is they're not locked in. If they don't want to be, they could trade up, package picks together, and go get Bryce Young if they think he's going to be at the level, or close to the level of what we're seeing in the playoffs right now. But I think they are more or less on their path, right? They're going to try to build this defense out and assume that that Goff, although he may not be Mahomes or Burrow or even Josh Allen or even Jalen Hurts, that he's not that far behind, right?
I thought you were going to say, and even Brock Purdy, but go ahead, yeah.
I guess you could say, yeah, right. I mean, the way he played, especially the way he played the second half of the season, and to your point about the defense getting better, which is, yeah, I'm surprised you said that because it nicks your boy Ben Johnson a little bit. But in any case, the man responsible for everything at the Lions organization has nothing to do with Dan Campbell. In any case, I can't believe I even said that. I didn't want to dignify that silly comment from the last time I read you. No.
It has nothing. What?
You wrote a good column about, listen to me with all the non sequiturs, about Antoine Davis.
Yeah. Detroit Mercy Guard.
Yeah. Taking up shots, putting the work in. Yeah, nice.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. I'm surprised you weren't negative because he didn't work hard enough or something.
That'll be the next column. Yes,
that'll be the next column. I think the San Francisco model is what they're doing. They're not going to find Bosa, but they've got two of the best linebackers in the league and that sort of thing. But they can maybe get there in that way, right? I mean, they're already. I mean, offensively, I think they can be even better if Jameson Williams comes around, right? Now the trick is they're going to have to maintain that offensive line play a little bit, because that's the idea when you not to diminish Goff, but right when you don't have Patrick Mahomes. I mean, let's face it, that's part of the reason they were so good. They have a great line, and that's going to be tricky how they use resources to try to help maintain that. But I'm with you, man. Some improvement on defense. The young guys get better, getting Tracy Walker back, going all in on the draft on defense. Maybe Jameson Williams starts to really develop, because that's the other common thing. Every one of these teams has a playmaker. Yeah, like an outside playmaker.
And really good running backs too.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
you need the guys who can, and that was the thing the Lions did have. They had with Jamal Williams, who they're probably going to lose in free agency. They had a closer. They had a guy who'd get those tough yards up the middle and help close out games. That's a question mark for them. But yeah, the offensive line. I mean, they're committed to it. I mean, Brad Holmes is committed to both, as we both know. The offense and defensive lines. It's an emphasis. He wants to build in the trenches. All that stuff. The question with Holmes is, by the way, this whole offensive line, he had very little to do with putting it together. It was already there except for Penei Sewell. But the question is, do they want to spend on interior offensive linemen? Are they going to spend to keep those guys? Because there's some people like Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn did not believe in paying interior offensive linemen.
They might have to draft one, right? They might need to draft one.
They should draft one. They should draft. They need to draft a right guard is what they really need. But the question is, when it comes time to pay Jonah Jackson, left guard, are they going to do that? Or are they going to try to keep him? Frank Ragnow, they love Ragnow. My suspicion is they'll do whatever they can to keep Ragnow. The guards, I'm not quite sure. But how far are they going to go? How high are they going to go to draft a guard? And it better not be in the first round. I don't think it's worth it. I think you can find guards second, third round who are, if you're a good GM, you should be able to identify those people and get good deals on them and spend your money on playmakers.
Yeah, because that's the common denominator is the playmakers, right? I mean, other than there's one Mahomes, there's one Burrow. I mean, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the game. You can make an argument Burrow is number 2, right? I mean, already, and Trevor Lawrence might be coming, right?
Yeah.
Josh Allen's, but still, you're talking about 4 or 5 dudes out of 32 teams or whatever. It's hard to get those guys. So how else can you be relevant? San Francisco's been relevant on and off for a while now, and
Without
they
an
have,
elite quarterback. Yeah.
yeah, right. So it can be done.
Well, is this a you know, what would you call it? The game between the Eagles and the 49ers this weekend. Is this the thing that tells us the test case of, do you need Jalen Hurts? You need an elite, dynamic quarterback, or you can get away with a dude who's nobody expected anything out of. I don't even know where was Brock Purdy drafted. I mean,
he was the last player picked in the draft.
He was Mr. Relevant. Okay. Yeah. So that's by the way, that's going to be an interesting situation for the 49ers, what happens with him. But yeah, can you get away with, if you have a very complete team and an okay quarterback, which isn't quite where the Lions are, because Goff is better than just an okay quarterback.
He is, by the way he played. Yeah.
But for the first year and a half, this first, last season, and then this season a little bit, people were not convinced about him. They would have thrown him on that same heap with Brock Purdy of like, he's just a bridge quarterback and this and that. I do believe, I don't know that he's the long-term answer for the Lions. I don't know if they're going to give him a contract extension unless he plays lights out this next year. I would let him finish his last 2 years with the Lions and see what happens. But I don't know if I'd commit to him. Now, that's also dependent on, do you believe you can get a better guy in the draft? Are you really convinced that you found his replacement and an elite level guy, the future of the franchise for the next, 10 years? If you're not, I don't know, maybe you stick with Goff, but
the one thing I would say about Goff and the Lions and the way they're constructed versus the 4 teams we're about to see in the AFC and NFC championship games is all 4 of those quarterbacks. Well, Mahomes is hurt a little bit, but when he's healthy, all 4 of those quarterbacks have mobility. I mean, Hurts is probably the best, but Burrow moves really, really well. He can get out, right? And
he has some mobility.
No, yeah, they all have more mobility than Goff, which means that offensive line, to your point, they're going to have to figure out how to maintain that level, especially if you can think about Jameson Williams becoming more part of the equation next year. They're going to need a little bit of, you got to have at least a little bit of time to drop back and let him get down the field. As fast as he is, that still, the play action might help with that. It delay it a little bit, the rush, and they love play action. Goff does in particular, but you're going to have some protection to get that guy the ball. Whereas Burrow got to the Super Bowl last year behind one of the worst offensive line in the NFL, right, with the Bengals. And because he can escape and he's mobile. I mean, he's not Hurts or Mahomes doesn't sprint either. Mahomes has great elusiveness too. So that's another interesting dynamic. But you're talking about the test case, man. Philadelphia is probably about as good up and down the roster as San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
they're really good, and yet we talk about these teams like there's a huge gulf, and I don't know that there is. I mean, I know it was just the first game of the season, but the Lions tore up that defense, and they couldn't get a stop. Most teams haven't been able to stop Hurts in that offense. But the other common thing, man, I'm curious what you think. The other common denominator, the playmakers. All 4 teams have them. The Chiefs might have the fewest number of them.
Yeah.
And in the past, that's not been true. I mean, they lost the most electric playmaker in the league in Tyreek Hill. But Travis Kelce is a move the change kind of playmaker. To me, that's what the Lions have in St. Brown. They have a move the change playmaker. That's not maybe not Kelce, but awfully good. He's just not a down the field, threat.
Yeah, he's more of he can play on the outside a little bit, but he's more comfortable on the inside, and he's a vital piece for them. But they need that outside threat, and that's what they had hoped DJ Chark would be. Especially because they knew that. Well, they didn't know, I guess, when they signed Chark that they were going to draft Williams, but they probably had an idea they were going to draft or find another outside receiver. Probably they thought they were going to draft an outside receiver in some fashion. But Chark just didn't really live up to what he needed to do.
Came on late.
But just wasn't worth that 10 million. I mean, I was talking about contracts and money, right? That's the big thing. He was paid so much money
Yeah, and then he
for
got
his
hurt, right?
production.
He got hurt and then was out, and then he struggled at
Um,
first, then got hurt and came back. Yeah, it was just
yeah,
it's a gamble for sure.
yeah. So they can probably use another piece, another outside receiver, and that'll help Brown even more. Maybe they can go trade back and get T.J. Hawkinson back as a tight end for them, but they need a better tight end probably. So there's lots of pieces that they need, but the offense I'm not worried about. I mean, because that I don't know what the Pro Football Focus stats would be, but the Lions' offensive line gave Jared Goff an eternity. It seemed like to throw back there, and he has decent pocket awareness. I would say Stafford had better, probably moving within the pocket, feeling the pressure. Goff is okay at it.
And Stafford could scramble a little bit too.
He could scramble a little bit, but just had really good pocket awareness. He just sensed the rush better and whatever. But that's okay. I mean, they know who Goff is. They know what he can do, and they work with that. But it's the defense. It's the defense that really just still, even though it looked better, it still has a ways to go. I mean, it was the worst defense in the league this year, and it wasn't much better last year even. So they've got to really do something to change that. And I don't know if it's just the players or maybe it's Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator. Who knows? It's kind of funny how he's getting all these, interviews for head coach, but he might be fired before the end of next season if this keeps up. If they start off bad again, I don't know how you hold on to him. How do you justify keeping him around? But we'll see. But the defense just, I wouldn't mind seeing them go high, sign. I think that nobody's saying this, the Lions, because I think someone asked, are they, Brad Holmes season-ending press conference, are you a player away? Well, no team's ever going to say they're a player away, but are they 1, 2, 3 players, a key free agent signing, a couple of draft picks, got kind of thing. And Holmes said, no, I don't think we're a player away from, whatever, winning the Super Bowl, but they need some help. They need to spend some money on defense somewhere and go get whatever it is, a lockdown corner or, a great edge rusher to complement Hutchinson, or a defensive tackle or an elite linebacker or whatever it is. They need to go find at least one elite player on defense, because even in the draft, I mean, you hope in the draft, but you can't expect, I mean, Aiden Hutchinson had a great year, but you're not always going to get that, so go find a sure thing. But they got to give that defense as much help as they can.
No, they do. I'm with you. I mean, even if they could get to a middle of the pack defense, you mentioned kind of where Cincinnati and Kansas City are, right?
Right.
Now they have obviously elite quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers made their runs with, their defenses were probably middle of the pack. Maybe some years they were, the year they won the Super Bowl, I don't know where they ranked. They were probably top 10 defense. But that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Would the Lions be good enough to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender with a middle of the pack defense and the offense that they have, more or less, with the idea that Williams is going to become, an elite downfield threat?
But they got the other sneaky little thing is the run game. If you don't hold on to Jamal Williams, and even with Williams, I mean, I love Jamal, but 17 touchdowns, is that going to happen again? A lot of questions about DeAndre Swift. He's not the player that
you might need to draft a running.
Going to be.
They might
probably got to draft
a
running back.
Yeah,
you got to find a guy, definitely. I think Williams is going to be pretty good. Like maybe 1,000-yard receiver. Maybe, I mean, this next season. Eventually, I think he's going to be easily probably a 1,500-yard receiver. But I think he'll be pretty good if he stays healthy. So I don't think they're really concerned about that part of the offense and with St. Brown. But yeah, there's no question with offense that they've got the pieces. Just running back, And that helps everything, right? The play action and all that other stuff.
Well,
So.
well, you wonder if Williams could be like Hill in the sense of the way Tyreek could, because I don't know if Williams is big enough. Maybe he is to go get balls, make contested catches, sideline catches, traffic catches the way, say, Jamar Chase does, right?
Right.
You know, is he or Deebo Samuel even? Is he that kind of guy?
I think he is. I think he's
or is he more like Tyreek Hill, where you get him on a slant, or you get him downfield because he's 10 yards behind the defender, you know?
I mean, speed is definitely his calling card, but I think he's got some. I saw him high point some balls. I saw him fight for some balls, on the down those sidelines, and he seems like he has a lot of competitiveness in him.
He does, no question.
No, I think you have to these days. You can't just be a finesse kind of guy or whatever.
No, he's one. He played special teams at Alabama, right? So
they wanted him to play on gunner on punt coverage. It's like, I'm sorry. And even I think Holmes or someone even took a swipe at that in the press conference. Like, bro, you can find a lot of people to play gunner. I know he's really fast. You want to lose the dude you traded up to draft? You want to lose him to whatever, a cheap shot, a block in the back, whatever on a.
By the way, now I know this has been discussed before, but does it still astound you that Joe Burrow and Jamison Williams were both at Ohio State at the same time?
No, why would
didn't play? It's just,
they didn't play. Yeah,
no, right? They didn't play. Not much.
Yeah, no, it happens. Kurt Warner, I mean, people don't always know what they have. Tom Brady getting benched in the second half.
I know they don't, do they?
No, I mean, it's college. It's like nobody knows anything in the NFL in football, but least of all in college, because in college, just the biggest, fastest athlete is going to be on the field. And if you're a little, I'm sure J-Mo was he's skinny now. He probably weighed $150 in college. So, is he gonna hold up or whatever?
Yeah, no, it's just funny to think of that roster at one point with all those guys. Of course, then Burrow transfers to LSU and he ends up on the same field with Lamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Those were his two wideouts.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
I know. Well, his wideouts aren't too bad right now, are they? With Chase and Higgins.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got a great offense and really good head coach who knows how to use them.
They really do. So I guess the point is, Carlos, to your point, that there is a path with Jared Goff, as long as they focus on defense, and then they have to do some maintenance on offense. Maybe consider drafting an interior lineman, another running back. And but other than that, use everybody else for defense, right?
Yeah, maybe some offensive guys play both ways. They go a little defense too, like in high school or something. No, but you know what? The one thing, the point I didn't make about the one player away when they asked Brad Holmes that was just that I think they know that potentially, like, they got a second chance here with Ben Johnson staying. The window is never as big as you think it is in the NFL, and this is their window right now.
No,
this is their window to win the division. The Packers are down, the Vikings are frauds, the Bears are awful. This is your chance. If you have a chance to win the division, this is going to be one of your best chances in a really long time. It may not come around again. So if you can stay healthy, so go open the checkbook, go ask Sheila for a little extra, in advance on the allowance, and go get some defensive studs to help that because we saw what happened with Sue, right? When you had Sue and Fairley and Cliff Averill and Tulloch and Vandenbosch and all those guys, I mean, that's what made the difference when you had Calvin and Stafford and Reggie Bush and, those guys. And of course, Brandon Pettigrew, who you want to throw to in a playoff game when Calvin is wide open in the middle of the field. But
it's funny those players may have been individually better, especially Calvin Johnson, but that offense wasn't as good as this one, in large part because the offensive line. Stafford didn't quite, even that year he was under pressure a fair amount. It's interesting.
Ben Johnson is way better than Scott Linehan was.
The coordinator, just the overall talent level. I mean, I know Johnson was the best player between those, that year's and this year's offense, but this offense is better. It's crazy to say that.
Because the coordinator, yeah, the way he's putting them in the right position
Well, and
using
because
what
of
he
the
has.
line, and because of that line, just the time. I mean, God.
I'm going to text Dominic Royola and tell him that you thought that he sucked at this team. Frank Ragnall's way
It's funny.
better.
I saw a headline recently. Maybe the day. I don't know. I want to say it was in the Free Press, but that they want to that's one of the main long term focuses they have, or at least intermediate term, is maintaining the play of that offensive line because the whole offense is built around it. Right.
Yeah.
So they don't have
Dave Burkett wrote it. Yeah.
It's not Jalen Hurts back there, right? So it's gonna be interesting maintaining that and yet getting better at defense, right? That's really the key. Or
Yeah,
those are the keys.
I'm okay with. I mean, maintaining the offensive line is great, but you got to manage your resources, and you got to find guys. I think that you spend money on your tackles, and they love Frank Ragnow, so I'm sure they'll. I don't have a big problem with spending money on a center, but you should be able to do it in a way that you don't have to draft, guards in the first round and top 10, top 15 picks. So it's good to have that philosophy, but you just can't overspend on that because the offensive line. I mean, it's just it functions in a way that lets other things happen. So
well, maybe this is where the Hawkinson pick will help, because they go defense with the first two picks in the first round. There are two first round picks rather, and then the second round maybe that's where they try to go get a running back.
Well, that's a good. So here's a good question, right?
And then that third round pick is better now, so maybe that's where you can get your guard and you go back to defense. I don't know.
Here's the question: is when Ben Johnson comes back, did they promise him we're going to get you in first? One of the first round picks will be offense, and you'll have a big say in who we pick. Who do you want?
That would be a fair amount of lack of self-awareness on his part to try to mess with. He can see how good that scout room is and what Holmes is doing. That would surprise me, but who knows?
They lobby. No. These guys lobby for their.
Well, no,
they
do, but to make that some kind of a deal to.
No, I'm not saying you're saying it's going to happen. It has to happen, or I'm not coming back. But I'm sure maybe that was part of the thing of just Holmes and Campbell are telling them, hey man, we're going to get you some more. I know we never know what their concerns are, and if he's saying, man, we're going to lose Jamal, we're not going to, what's going to happen with him. I'm sure that they've talked to him about, hey, this is our plan. We're only going to spend so much. We're probably not going to be able to keep Jamal, but we'll get you running back help, and it'll be an early pick. We're not going to you're coming back and sorry, we're going all 12 picks or whatever defense. Good luck. So that's probably one of the things that I'm sure is. I mean, you know how it is. You keep your talented employees, and you want to incentivize them to stick around and keep doing a good job.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, for sure, absolutely. But I would also imagine he has some faith in the front office and
sure
in that way. But no, it'll be interesting. We should we'll get Dave back in here maybe after the season, and he can we can have more of this kind of conversation once we see what to your point about the test game between Philly and San Francisco, and then the Super Bowl.
A referendum. It's a referendum.
And then the Super Bowl is going to be
quarterbacks.
Yeah, and then the Super Bowl is going to be a great, elite quarterback against potentially maybe a great roster. We'll see how it all shakes out. But look, man, well, let's take one more break, and then come back with your favorite thing, and pay a couple of bills here for the Free Press Sports show with Carlos and Shawn.
Perfect.
Is that all right?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll talk to you in a minute. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Shawn. Carlos, it's that time of the show, man. What is your favorite thing?
I'm gonna have two favorite things, Shawn, if I can. I'm probably gonna.
It's your show.
It's my show. My favorite thing is kind of bittersweet. It was last week at the Free Press when we said goodbye to our 7 colleagues who took buyouts to spare any layoffs at the Free Press. I'm sure people have heard about that. Gannett had company-wide layoffs, mandated layoffs, but people like Peter Bhatia and Brian Dickerson or Penny Combs have pretty big salaries, and they were able to spare layoffs of younger staff members. And I talked to a lot of younger staff members, not a lot, but a couple of younger staff members, and they were really worried. Young people are at the bottom of the totem pole. They know that they're the first ones on the chopping block. So it was a really gracious, act on their part. But it was also good to see people, and it's kind of, it's a sad occasion, and there was a lot of crying. It went on for a long time. It was like a 2-hour farewell. A lot of people talk. Journalists like to talk, I hear, probably more than they even like to write. But it was a lot of nice, heartfelt testimonials. It was good to see the newsroom fill. I haven't been in the newsroom in maybe more than a year, but it was good to see so many people there getting together for a really good reason. It was encouraging, and hopefully we don't have to go through that anytime soon again. But I think it was nice to hear what people had to say. Not only the people, honoring the ones who are leaving us, but also the people who are leaving had really nice things to say about the work we're doing, and to encourage us to keep doing that work. And my second favorite thing was that I got to go to. I got to take my kid back to school in Ann Arbor, and my favorite thing to do in Ann Arbor is to go to Pinball Pete's and go play classic arcade games. So I got to play the Tron game, and I got to like the 4th level this time, Shawn, and I haven't done that since I was probably 12. So Donkey Kong beat me. Centipede was awful. They need to fix the screen on that game. But it was fun to go out there, play some pinball, some classic video games. It's one of my favorite things. And with my kid and my wife, and we're just spent about an hour in there playing. And you actually use quarters. They don't even do tokens, like real quarters. So if you get a chance, Pinball Pete's in Ann Arbor is a hot spot. And it was hopping on Saturday. It was like a rave. So it was a lot of fun.
Did you do the dancing, or you have to hit the squares as they light up?
I don't think they have that. I think that's too.
They used to.
That may be in a part. It's like they have pool tables, and they have a lot of things. I don't know if they have that. There's no way. No, I would never try that. I'm awful at.
It's not a big area. I mean, it's not like a big dance floor, but it was just a small area. And I used to see, when my kids were little, we used to go there all the time. The three of us, me and my two sons. And it's funny, my wife would often work on Friday nights back in those days, and we would go up on campus, and we would go to this little Chinese place on South U for those who know Ann Arbor, and the food's fine, it's whatever. They were just happy to get egg rolls, but they were young, but the best part is then we'd walk down the street to go into Pinball Pete's, and I would play a little bit.
What's your game?
I liked Pac-Man, but when I liked Gallagher. Is it Galaga? Galaga, is that it? Yeah.
Galaga.
I love that. Was probably my favorite when I was young. But the best part for me was just watching them play.
Yeah.
Games that were around when I was young, and they loved it. And the pinball was fine, but they loved the games. And I don't know if they used to have arcade games in there where you'd sit in and drive your car, the racing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, I love those too. They love those. But it's a fun place.
Next time I go there, I'm going to look for your high score on that dance game and try to beat it.
No, I never did that. I just enjoyed watching the students, because it's mostly full of U of M students, Michigan students.
It's all kids. It's all college kids.
And I just watched that. I enjoyed watching them kind of do the dancing games. But no, well, that's my favorite thing, man. That you got to go do that. That's totally.
I could have said I shoveled coal this weekend. Like, that's my favorite thing. You got some exercise.
That's my new favorite thing, because I didn't know that you had that in you to have that kind of mirth and enjoyment at Pinball Pete's, and that's awesome, man.
Well, what's funny about it is
that's really great.
With all the video games now, like online, the Switch and PlayStation, all this, they've reissued those games. So there's a lot of classic games, but there's just something different about the cabinet and the joystick, the old school joystick and all that. And Tron does not exist, as far as I know, on any any
Oh, that's cool.
modern video games.
No,
So.
my favorite thing is your favorite thing. It's the same. I walked out of the newsroom last week after that gathering, and by the way, it was 3 hours, not 2. But it was
It
just
felt like 4.
it didn't feel long to me at all. I just seeing all those people in the newsroom, seeing all the young people that we've hired in the last couple of years, seeing the reflection in the newsroom, in the community in a different way, which we really try to make a point of the last couple of years. We still have a ways to go, obviously, but that I really enjoyed. But mostly, I love listening to the stories. I love finding out that our former executive editor was running in the middle of the night to get prescriptions for people, or babysitting or whatever, and just
rubbing Mike Ulrich's feet.
Yeah, but just right, because they were so cold. Just the little things from everybody. Everybody got up and spoke, and people got up and spoke about them, and just sharing stories about what they'd meant to our newsroom, what they meant to the Free Press, how they're going to take part of the Free Press with them, and just having that energy in there. It was really something, and that was by far. I hadn't felt like that in a long, long time in this business. I know it was just one night, but man, it was nice to feel that again. It had been a long time. All those people, all that energy. It's why a lot we got. Maybe you didn't get in the business for that, but I did, because I love the newsroom. I love the chaotic energy a little bit, the deadline pressure, trying to figure out stories and all that, and having people from all different backgrounds come and work under pressure to get the paper out. And you could feel that a little bit last week, and that was really something.
I got into the business for the high pay and the easy hours. That's what I got into.
Well, some people know they want to be in sports, and so the newsroom really isn't a thing for them. But so that's why I was curious if you wanted to be a news person, then switch to sports, or if you want to be a sports writer.
Oh, I was always going to be a sports guy. But the one thing that did surprise me, and I hear this every once in a while, and I don't know if you're as aware of this, but when we get to staff things and here and there, like some of the younger journalists will say, "Oh man, it's good to finally meet you. Like I've seen your writing and whatever and this and that, but I've never met you." And you don't think of that because when we've both been at the paper for more than 20 years and you think of young people as they come and go. They're there, they're a little bit, maybe you meet them, maybe you don't, whatever. But they kind of look at us a little bit more as like, you guys have been here a long time and I've seen your byline before. And it's like, oh, so it's finally good to meet. And I feel guilty about that a lot when I feel like, man, I should make more of an effort to be at more functions. And as a younger person, when you're younger, you have more time to hang out and do all that stuff. We're old married people with other responsibilities and kids and this and that. So it's a little harder, but I've tried to make an effort. So these things always remind me that we need, especially in these disconnected times, we need to make more of an effort to get together.
No, for sure. No, I've long been aware of that. It was nice to meet some people. I mean, shoot, we got to meet Andrew Hammond, who helps produce this podcast in person.
I know.
Never met him in person. Time. Yeah, no, for sure. It is a good reminder. In any case, it's good to be back with you, man. Sorry, I'm a little bit low key this week. Hopefully, be back to my normal self next week. And
rest up. Take a day off.
Yeah. Do you want to take us out? Tell us who we need to, or thank the people we need to thank, and tell us where we can get this good stuff.
Yeah, we need to thank our producers, Andrew Hammond and Robin Chan, executive producers Kirkland Crawford and Anjanette Delgado. Man, Anjanette Delgado right now is the interim editor of the Free Press, and this is the first time we're mentioning her, Shawn. This may be our last podcast.
It could be. And
now Peter Bhatia now is technically not our editor now, but let's thank him one more time. Editor Emeritus.
Yeah.
Let's give him some fancy title. Peter Bhatia one last time. And if you like this podcast, Shawn, you may not know this, but you can You can find it where you find all podcasts, on MySpace, and I don't know where else, on your Microsoft Zune, maybe Spotify, Apple. Give us a ranking. Let us know what you think. Subscribe. And we should also thank the readers, and the listeners for sticking with us yet again for another podcast. And when will we talk to our readers or our listeners again, Shawn?
Next week, right?
Yeah, we may have a special guest next week.
Okay, well, we shouldn't say that just in case it doesn't happen.
We may have. I said may.
Yeah, it's a good tease. It's a good tease, though. Wait, that's nice way to tease. All right, man. We should thank the listeners also. We want to thank you all for spending some time with us, and we're grateful that you do. And we will talk to you all next week.